Hello, I'm Will Sampson. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, where we explore the business of woodworking and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. This episode is sponsored by the Executive Briefing Conference. Today, my guest is Amanda Conger from the Cabinet Makers Association, with more survey information on small to medium-sized professional shops. But before we get to Amanda, I want to start off talking about the changing face of the small shop. I've been woodworking since I was a kid, banging boards together with nails to make stuff. But when I first started taking woodworking seriously as an adult, I sought out all sorts of information to try to learn what the right way to do things was. There was no YouTube back then, so it was lots of books, magazine articles, and sharing information with other craftspeople. Top priority seemed to be to select the tools and set up shop in an efficient fashion. That's no different today, but lots of the tools and layout recommendations have dramatically changed over the years as technology and fashion have shaped the woodworking shop. In the beginning, there were hand tools and a shop centered around a joiner's bench. While I put a hand tool-oriented shop together on a workbench in a corner of a garage, I dreamed of having one of those classic, massive German red beech joiner's benches with big vices on the side and the end, and a whole line of dog holes for clamping work on top. If only I could get a bench like that, I thought, then I'd be set. I continued to collect an arsenal of hand tools, slowly upgrading to better quality tools as I discovered treasures at auctions and yard sales. Then I discovered Japanese tools and learned a whole new way of working. I watched Toshio Adate working in a shop without a workbench. He would sit on the floor, deftly using his feet to secure what he was working on, cutting wood with pull saws and planing it smooth with Japanese planes that worked on the pull stroke. It was eye-opening, and I embraced the Ryoba and the Dozuki saws, but I couldn't quite bring myself to toss away my workbench or my Stanley bench planes. Then I was captured by the siren song of the power tool. If I just had the right machines, I could do anything. I looked what you could do with a router and the right bits and jigs. But portable power tools had their limits too, and books and magazine articles showed the shop layout where a table saw took center stage, casting the workbench to the perimeter. Joiner, planer, table saw became the hallowed triumvirate of woodworking. Of course, you needed to have a drill press and a radial arm saw too. Magazine ads told hobbyists they really didn't need the table saw because they could get their Craftsman radial arm saw to rip crosscut and dado with the best of them. Then miter saws and compound sliding miter saws came along as a much safer and more accurate substitute for the radial arm saw. But before I got one of those, I had other priorities. I was doing musical instrument work and needed to cut curves and resaw wide, thin boards. I yearned for a big bandsaw that was way out of my price range. I ended up building one from scratch using metalworking skills I had acquired over the years. I called it Frankenstein because the 300-pound behemoth was cobbled together with all sorts of parts dug up from the graves of other machines. It worked, and I still have it, but I had valued my time. I probably could have bought 3 better bandsaws for less. I also built a vertical panel saw to cut up plywood. Eventually, my shop began to resemble those pro shop designs I'd envied for so long. I had the central table saw, the joiner, the planer, the bandsaws, drill presses, miter saw, router table, and plenty of portable power tools. But while I was chasing that dream, the pro shop had changed. Fewer and fewer shops I visited looked like that anymore. The new shop centerpiece was a CNC machine. At first, it was mostly a point-to-point machine with vacuum pods to hold the work in place. The CNC was often flanked by an edge bander, and either a European-style sliding table saw or a big beam saw to cut the parts before the CNC did the joinery. The CNC could also do spectacularly precise curved work. Then came the CNC router with a vacuum table instead of pods. It eliminated the need for cutting parts on a separate machine. Now a whole shop could be based on just two key machines, the CNC router and the edge bander. This signaled that the age of panel processing had arrived. More and more professional woodworking was built on manipulating engineered panel products rather than reshaping solid wood. Of course, these modern machines also required the brains of a computer to do their jobs. But computers had become such a ubiquitous part of modern life that fewer and fewer woodworkers objected to the technological takeover of what had once been a skilled handcraft, especially if they were seriously trying to make a living at woodworking. Today, even small shop professional woodworkers find themselves mostly in two camps, one that has CNC production and the other that is thinking about adding it. Oh, sure, there are a few holdouts, making beautiful curlicue shavings with a hand plane on a joiner's bench. But they're rare in the 21st century. Even hobbyist woodworkers are embracing CNC. Now, if I can just figure out where to put one in my shop. Besides CNC automation, one thing I've seen that helps shops move ahead is when they discover the power of information and networking. As mentioned before, our sponsor today is the Executive Briefing Conference, which is a superior opportunity to learn, be inspired, and have face-to-face interchanges with top leaders in the industry. This year's EBC will be held at the spectacular Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. In addition to top speakers and presentations, there will also be tours of Concepts in Millwork and the Mill Woodworking Training Facility. It's an unparalleled opportunity to obtain business intelligence to improve your enterprise. Learn more at executivebriefingconference.com. To talk more about CNC and outsourcing, I'd like to bring back Amanda Conger from the Cabinet Makers Association to share more about what we've learned from the CMA's annual benchmark survey.
One of the things that continues to jump out at me is the growing adoption of CNC manufacturing by even small shops. It's more than half and growing if the survey is correct. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. The number does continue to grow each year, and it does surprise me. And over 50% already utilize CNC, and additional 15 are looking to get their first machine. Initially, I think the first year I did this, it was in the low 30s. So it is really growing. And I think, they need to do it is what they're realizing. They don't have a choice if they want to keep up.
Do you think that's related to the lack of skilled labor in the market that they can find, or is it competing with bigger shops, or all of the above?
All of the above. It's for more efficiency, and because of the employees, they just can't find them, as you know.
Yeah. How is growing CNC use changing the small to medium-sized shop? Are you seeing that the shops are getting smaller in the number of employees but larger in dollar sales, or is it just expanding their opportunities? What are you seeing?
I think it's all the above. It is changing the way they do business overall, not only production-wise, but also in the projects they can do. Over 75% agreed that it's added significant manufacturing capacity, and every single one of them who has a CNC confirmed that they are more profitable because of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it was part of the survey, but just anecdotally, are you seeing that these guys that are adding CNCs to their shop are also outsourcing their CNC services to other people?
Yes, I was going to mention that too. That they do. What they're really trying to do is utilize that machine as much as possible throughout the workday. So a lot of them just outsource CNC services to other shops who don't have it yet, because that's what they did before they got it. So they want to use it as much as they can, have that machine make money for them.
What about specialized shops that are new? I know there are a number of shops that they may have started as a regular cabinet shop, but the CNC was so successful that they basically became a CNC job shop rather
Yes.
than doing that. Is that a trend too, or is that just on the periphery?
I think it's just on the periphery. I don't think it's, I know a few of those people, but not a bunch. I don't see it as a trend.
Yeah. Now, besides CNC use, I'm also seeing growing willingness to outsource, as the shop doesn't feel like they have to build everything themselves, that they may outsource doors and drawers and even cabinet boxes. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing that as a trend too?
Yes. Outsourcing continues to make a lot of sense for smaller shops because, especially the ones that don't have that sophisticated equipment to do every type of project. Machinery is a huge investment for small shops, so outsourcing makes sense. But the odd thing I found in this survey that 6% said they don't outsource at all, which was a much larger number than I expected. I would think that everybody outsources something.
Well, my experience has been that there is this emotional reticence among particularly the smaller shop guys that they somehow feel that it's ethically, morally, or just dishonest not to make everything themselves. Is that something that you sense too?
Yes, but I mean, at the end of the day, you don't do the knobs and the pulls and the countertops. You're outsourcing something. But right. I understand why they answered the way they did.
Do you forge your own hardware?
Right.
Everybody draws the line somewhere.
Yeah.
And I guess that you have to see what makes sense for you. But It just seems really hard for me that how can you make doors and drawers, as efficiently as some company that's doing it 24/7, 365.
High volume people, yeah.
Yeah. I suppose the argument could be made that we don't, nobody makes them the way we want to make them. But that kind of seems a little short-sighted.
Very short-sighted. Well, and the one thing that I noted, what I didn't even think of that was interesting of what they do outsource is the turnings and the custom millwork, which makes perfect sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So like onlays and things like that. Yeah. Well, there are very few shops these days as far as folks that are primarily their business is casework that even have facilities to do carvings and turnings and those kinds of things. So that's a case where they know they can't do it themselves and they get it from somewhere else. But the other case with the doors and drawers and things like that, and even cabinet boxes, it seems, I guess it goes against the grain that, I can make those things. Why should I do it? It's kind of like the old thing about, the husband and wife go into a furniture store and the husband looks at a table that the wife thinks is really nice and he's thinking in his head, I could make that.
He does.
But should you?
Right. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. We say that all the time.
We're going to stop right there for today, but we'll have still more from Amanda about the CMA Benchmark Survey in our next podcast. You can find all of our podcasts at woodworkingnetwork.com and in popular podcast channels. Thanks again to today's sponsor, the Executive Briefing Conference. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.